QMotion is a product hardware that is designed in the US, but it is not part of the worldwide Hunter Douglas group. Hunter Douglas currently have the licensing rights to QMotion in Australia, and over the last 5 or 6 years have done an amazing job to sell volumes of this product, which obviously enables us to retain our license for this product. But as I said, it is not a Hunter Douglas product, but still designed in the US by QMotion. So what is it? Okay, QMotion is a battery-operated roller blind, but it also has a spring balance technology factor involved as well. So at one end of the roller tube, we have a little electric motor powered by some D-cell batteries, and at the other end of the tube, we have a combination of springs. So like in your garage roller door, which is quite big and heavy, it's actually a spring system in that door that actually lifts the door. It's just getting a signal manually from the operator to move, and then the spring does the work. So QMotion does the same thing. Combination of springs, the tensioning of those springs lift and lower the shade, and the batteries and the motor are there just to provide that charge or that signal. So because the springs are doing the work, the batteries can last up to 5 years with normal operation up and down twice a day. So it's quite an innovative product and very successful in the market to date. Now it's battery operated, which means there's no electrician required. There's no physical hard wires that need to be connected anywhere through the home. So it's quick and easy for a normal installer to come along and install. Has remote control, but it also has that manual option as well. So the remote controls, we actually have two. We have a single channel remote, obviously for a single blind. You can have multiple blinds running on that channel. Or we have a 7 button, but a 6-channel remote with the 7th button operating as the all button. So you have 2 different remote options there for QMotion. But you can, as I said, operate the shade manually. If the remote's not in reach, or it's, I don't know, fallen down the back of the lounge and you can't get to the remote, you can go up to the shade, and just by pulling the bottom rail down between 25 and 50 millimeters, that blind will actually roll up. I can then manually get that blind and pull it manually to the position I want it to be, and it will hold that position. And then if I find the remote, I can come along and press the button, and obviously that will operate the shade as well. So batteries inside the tube means it's a very nice, clean look. There's no external battery pack. We've got really good light gaps on this product as well. Normally on a motorized product where you have a head of the motor at one end and an idle end or a spring end at the other end, you'd have a bigger gap where the motor is. This product has symmetrical light gaps of 14 millimeters, which is obviously making a really good look. Now there's also roller bearings at the end of each of the actual pins at the end of the tube, which really provide a very smooth, seamless operation as well. Measuring for QMotion roller blinds exactly the same as you would measure for edge roller blinds. You give us your opening size, or you give us your edge of architrave to edge of architrave face mount, and you make no deductions. We make any allowances for that at our end. Corners and bays are a little bit different, and you see those measurements within your SkillTech book or on your pricing app, because not being a Hunter Douglas product and not using edge brackets, the brackets for QMotion are larger and configured differently. So when you get into corners and bays, the deductions will differ. Now there's obviously 2 rolling aspects that you can order the actual roller blind in, and standard roll, which obviously helps keep your fabric closer to the glass, is probably one of the most common things to do. But just keep in mind, if you've selected a fabric where the backing of the fabric is a different color, you will see that at the color of along the top of the roller. So there might be options, or might be times where you do need to reverse roll the product. Now when you do reverse roll a QMotion product, you will actually have, I might stand this side, Trev, because that'll probably be in the way. And what we've got here is a QMotion roller blind that we'll install shortly, and we are installing this, and it has been configured as a reverse roll. And you can see I've got a rubber pad sitting at the front. Normally in a standard roll configuration, that's at the back of the bracket. The reason it needs to be there is QMotion, each time the QMotion roller blind goes up, it recalibrates and checks its top limit. So it needs to feel, or it needs to hit a rubber pad basically to tell it to stop in that position. So if we're reverse rolling, we need to have that facing forward. You need to be conscious of that because you need to make your customer aware that in a reverse roll scenario, they are going to see this part of the bracket and also a clear rubber tab at the front. Reverse roll is great. It can create that valance effect. And certainly in corners and bays, it can really help reduce the cloth gaps when you've got the fabric coming off the front of the rollers. QMotion bracket. As I mentioned, the QMotion bracket are not edge brackets. The QMotion, this is the standard bracket here. So you can see here, this is a bracket, and they come configured for face fit, standard roll. And you will see here on that bracket, you can see little 4 white screws there. If you want to top fit, or if you want to reverse roll the shade, you need to undo those 4 screws and rotate that inner part around to accommodate the fitting aspect that you want. But they come out of QMotion, so they come out of our factory in that standard configuration. They are bigger than edge brackets. They do have some nice bracket covers, so you can cover that up and dress it off if you're on a face scenario. They come in 3 colours. You have black, you have white, and you have the grey button. The grey colour, I should say. They are 2 sizes, as always. We have 66 and 84 millimetre brackets. That is determined by fabric you choose and the drop. Obviously, a thicker fabric, bigger drop, we need more projection to allow that roll of fabric to roll up and operate in that system. So there are 2 different size brackets. Now, even though we call them 66 and 84, the physical dimensions of the bracket is not actually that much difference in size. So don't be nervous about going from 66 to 84. I think the overall dimension of the bracket is only 5 or 6 millimetres bigger in the physical overall size of the bracket. Remember, you have that 14 millimetre universal light gap as well. Now, QMotion also offer a dual bracket. Lovely, very aesthetic bracket, maybe not. This is actually now the fascia bracket. So QMotion have obsoleted the standard dual bracket. But if you do want to put your QMotion into a dual bracket assembly, let's say you're fitting it up into a recess or a bulkhead, you can still call up a dual bracket, but it will be the bracket that accommodates the fascia. The roller blinds are only designed to work in standard roll configuration, and obviously available in the 3 colours as well. Now, we also developed something a couple of years ago to try and give us a streamlined look where you had a scenario for a customer who was buying some edge chain drive roller blinds, and then they wanted some QMotion blinds as well. So we made an adapter which fits our edge bracket. We called it Q-Edge, so it's a QMotion adapter fitted to an edge bracket. Now, there are a couple of limitations with this. It can only be face fitted, and it can only accommodate a standard roll blind. So obviously great if you're in a room and you want to have a consistent bracket look with QMotion to edge, but just keep in mind, face mount, standard roll only. This will also increase your light gap. You can see here we've got a plastic part that we've designed, molded, and attached to the bracket, and it will increase the light gap to 19 millimetres. Obviously, the same edge bracket covers are available for face mount as well. Now, there are fascias, and I mentioned with our QMotion dual bracket, if you want to do duals in QMotion, it's the fascia bracket that you'll get. But obviously, there's 2 types of fascia that you can get on QMotion. And the first type is obviously just a fascia for a single roller tube. Now, this fascia bracket is a squared off bracket, and it accommodates, put it the right way, and it accommodates a fascia which will clip on. In this scenario here, we've actually got a open bottom fascia, so this accommodates a reverse roll shade. You also have another fascia, obviously with a return on it, which will clip onto the same bracket, and this will accommodate a standard roll shade. So it's just a matter of telling us whether you're reverse rolling, whether you're standard rolling. Again, you need to specify, you need to be conscious that there are two size brackets. There's a 66 and an 84, which obviously means the fascia, there's two different size fascias as well. But again, that's determined by the size of the blind when you order it. So you've got fascia for single QMotion. And as I said, we've got this rather large dual bracket for QMotion, which is designed to accommodate the fascia. Now, I'm pretty sure, as far as I'm aware, that this is the only dual blind product on the market that actually offers you a fascia. So obviously if people are wanting dual blinds, offer them the fascia as well, or at least mention the fascia as an option to them as well. Just want to come back to one point. With the single fascia for QMotion, if you're mounting that in a reveal scenario, you will not be supplied the plastic end cap. Obviously they're designed to be fitted when the product is on face. If you still want that, even though it's a reveal scenario, you'll have to request it on the order, and you'll also have to be conscious that it'll have these little lugs here. It's designed, take that off, it's designed to push onto the side of that QMotion fascia bracket. And the lugs there obviously need to locate into the holes in that bracket. So if you want to have that in a reveal scenario, you'd have to cut those lugs off and secure that in some other way. Now also, not last year but the year before, we also made QMotion available with the Edge headbox and side channel. Because obviously motorised product in an area where you've got a theatre room or people who work night shift, motorising that sort of product is obviously becoming very popular. So you can now have the normal Edge headbox, again with the Q Edge bracket, because it's the Edge bracket that will fit into the Edge headbox. You can now put a QMotion in headbox and side channel. One of the great things about QMotion was all the different functionality that the product gave us. Okay, we had very quiet operation. We had universal or symmetrical light gaps. We had that manual override function. You can operate it with the remote control, but you could come along and operate it manually. But there was a growing demand for having all those features, but not battery operated. So QMotion launched what they referred to as QMotion Hardwired. Now it's a low voltage 24-volt motor. Obviously slots into the same QMotion roller tube that you know, uses the same QMotion brackets, but it's hardwired in, but low voltage. So again, all the functionality that we know about and we love about QMotion, but without the need to look at changing batteries every 3 to 5 years. There's also QMotion Small. Obviously with the existing QMotion system, there was a minimum obviously size blind that we could do, and there was quite a demand to do smaller blinds, some of those windows down as low as 400 millimeters in width. So QMotion designed a new roller tube and a new motor that would give us that 400 millimeter capability as far as width. To do that, they had to take the whole spring assembly away because there just wasn't enough room to fit it in the tube. So this Small doesn't operate with the spring balance technology. It also doesn't run on D-cell batteries. It will run on 3 AA lithium batteries, and they will have a much more limited lifespan of approximately 12 months. But it will enable you to do all the sizes in QMotion. It's also another option, QMotion larger tube. So just like Edge roller blinds, where you have a scenario where you've got a whole series of roller blinds in a room at different widths, you really want those all to be on the same size tube so you have that consistent look right throughout that room. So you can now call up the large tube in QMotion on blinds that are smaller than 2500 in width, so you have a consistent look throughout the area. QMotion remotes, I mentioned those. We've got the single channel remote control. We've got the 7-channel remote control, which is actually a 6 plus a all channel, a number 7. And you also have a QMotion signal repeater, which is a little device, a USB device that plugs into a DC adapter into a power point, and it helps extend the signal range so that you can get QMotion working over larger areas. Another great addition was QSync. Now, QSync was a modem-style device which would connect into the Wi-Fi system of the consumer's home. You would then download an app, downloadable to either Apple or Android, and it would enable that touch control on your mobile device to operate the shade. And it's really quick and easy to set up. Consumers normally would do that themselves, but it's really a good thing for obviously the dealers to be conscious of and know a little bit about as well. So the little QSync gives them that home automation system for their QMotion blinds. QMotion roller blinds are only available with our elliptical bottom rail. So as I mentioned, the brackets have that clear rubber bumper or that rubber tab, and the blind is designed to hit that each time it comes up and just recheck and recalibrate its top limit. So the product's designed to work with an elliptical style rail, and our standard ellipse bottom rail works perfectly in that scenario. And as you know, we've got one of the most unique ellipse rails on the market. We have our integrated soundproofing bumper strip on the back of that rail as well. Now, lots of options with QMotions from a bracketing perspective. We've got fascias, we've got jewels, we've got different ways of configuring the bracket as to how we want the blind to operate, but we do not have a linking system for QMotion. So they're always individually controlled and operated blinds. Now what we're going to do now, we're going to quickly install a QMotion shade on the house behind me here. I've got already got my brackets pre-installed, and we've got obviously the blind that's come from the factory. As I said, we've top fitted these and we've got reverse roll. So we had to undo the screws and we had to actually configure that bracket to actually take the shade the way we want it to be. So we can see our rubber tab at the front. Consumers won't always like that, and it's always worth having the discussion with the consumer if they're doing a reverse roll. Have that discussion with the consumer about using the fascia to dress that off. It really gives it a nice clean look. Obviously the blind is here. When they actually assemble and manufacture the blind in the factory, they do cycle test it, they run it, they make sure that it's running up and down at the appropriate speed, and then they put the blind into sleep mode. So that way when it's shipped out to you, it's not constantly trying to find a signal. So I've installed the brackets. Now I'm going to come along. I've got my shade. The end pins are universal on QMotion. And obviously I can tell straight away we've got the Luxaflex logo there. I can see the fabrics rolling forward. So it's a reverse roll shade. I will just bring it up from behind. Drop that into the bracket. And there we go. So what I need to do now, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pair that shade to a remote control. Now it's really simple and quick and easy to do. So what I'm going to do, as I said, the shade is actually in sleep mode. So I want to wake it up. So I'm going to come along, I'm going to get the bottom rail, I'm going to pull the shade down, say 100 millimeters, a couple hundred millimeters. It should wake that blind up. Then I'm going to grab my remote, I'm going to select channel 1, and I'm going to press the up button. So after I've woken it up and pressed channel 1 and up, it should pair to that remote. 1, up. So nothing's happened here. I'm going to do it again. 1, up, not playing nicely, which can happen. So that shade hasn't actually come out of sleep mode correctly. It needs to come out of sleep mode. So I'm going to override it, and I'm actually going to show you what you need to do in that scenario. So it's not always a bad thing that things don't always go to plan. I'm going to take a battery out. I'm going to leave that battery out for at least 30 seconds. That will completely wake the shade up when I insert the battery back in it. So just take out the one battery or break the contact. You don't really have to take the battery all the way out, but at least if you break the contact, you need to do it for about 30 seconds. It may work within a shorter time span, but 30 seconds, I guess, is really a good guarantee that you've left it long enough so that when I come back in, it's out of sleep mode. Not that I'm timing it, but that's probably close enough to 30 seconds, I would think so now. So I'm going to pop that battery back in, put my battery cover cap back on, grab my remote, press 1, up, and you can see there the shade's gone up. That signifies that it's now found the remote and it's paired to it. So you can see it's gone up, it's hit those top rubber tabs, sense that it's hit that, and then it releases a little bit. And that's the normal operation for a QMotion blind. From a consumer's perspective, the next part that I'm going to do is normally all that the installer will need to do to program the shade. I'm going to set a bottom limit. So I'm going to hit channel 1, I'm going to press the down button, and this shade will stop at what we refer to as a default bottom limit. So it stopped about halfway in that scenario. But that's not where I want the bottom limit, so I'm going to reset that bottom limit. So I'm going to press and hold the down button until this shade jogs up and down, up, down, stop, let go of the button, hit the remote up there. I'm now going to manually put that blind in the position I want for the bottom limit. I'm going to get it, I'm going to drag it down. I want my bottom limit to be there. I could turn the roller tube at the top by hand to get that little bit more incremental control if I wanted to. Now with the remote, making sure you're still on the correct channel, channel 1, I'm going to press and hold the down button. When that is set, it will automatically start to roll up. And that's done. So I've now installed a shade and I've set a bottom limit, and it's now done all the other calculations automatically for its 50% position and 25 and 75% position. So channel 1, 50%, come down to halfway. Channel 1, 75%. Channel 1, all the way down. And our QMotion blind is done. Now we get a few people ask us, how would I change that bottom limit if I've now decided I want it 20 millimeters higher or 10 millimeters lower? Easily done, but it's a two-staged process. I can't change a bottom limit to within 50 millimeters of where it's already set. So to change that bottom limit down 10 millimeters, I need to bring it back much further and then take it back. So I'm going to have to reset the limit twice. And I'll do it quickly because it's quite easy. I want to change the bottom limit. I'm going to press and hold the down button until I get the jog. Move the shade to where I want it, rolling it up. Press and hold the down button. Shade will roll up once it's accepted that new bottom position. Let's just check that. My new bottom limit, 1. That's my new limit. It's not where I want it. I want to bring it down closer to the sill. Okay, channel 1, press and hold the down button until I get my jog up and down again. Bring the shade closer to the sill manually. I really want it to be like almost sitting on the sill. Make sure we're still on channel 1. Press and hold down. When it sets and accepts that limit, it'll automatically roll up. Let it go to the top. I wouldn't recommend you stop it halfway. Let it go to the top because it's going to recalculate a top limit as well. Let's check where we are at now. And our bottom limit should be nice and close to the sill. There you have it. Guys, that's QMotion. Ran through the brackets, a few of the features and benefits. It's a very unique product. And obviously from an installation perspective, in most circumstances, it's pretty simple. But remember, you've got lots of programming, lots of troubleshooting videos on the alfie.hunterdouglas.com.au website as well. If there's no questions or comments from anyone, Trevor, the end of the session. Thanks, guys.